Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Disco Wonderland. And for today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about East Lab 2 and why you shouldn't mash. And I know what you're thinking. I can't mash in a fighting game? Listen, it all makes sense in a second. Before we get into the video, I just want to say, please, if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. It helps your boy out with the algorithm, all that good stuff. And with that being said, let's hop into some East Lab. So, mashing in fighting games. I've done it, you've done it, your mom probably done it, your grandma probably did it, hell, even your cat probably have done it at one point. When it comes to mashing, at some point or another, we all do it, whether you're a beginner player or an Evo champion. However, in East Lab 2, mashing is a little bit discouraged because it's actually tied to a game mechanic. But before I touch on that, I want to touch on something else. So right below your green health bar, we have a yellow gauge, and that gauge in this game is known as a risk gauge. Now, you're probably thinking of similarly how Guilty Gear risk gauges work, where you block your opponent's attacks, your risk gauge goes up, and the more it goes up, eventually when your opponent lands that big hit, you will take a lot of damage. However, in this game, it works a little bit differently. See, when in this game, if you block attacks, your risk gauge actually goes down. And if it goes down to a point where you have no more risk gauge left, you'll be stunned for a brief period of time, and your opponent has free reign to do whatever big combo they want on you. Also, not only that, your risk gauge is also tied to a lot of your defensive actions in this game. One of those defensive actions being your backdash. So in this game, if you backdash, you're spending 1 bar of risk gauge. You have 4 gauges total. So if you backdash 4 times in a row, you no longer have any risk gauge left. So not that only means you can't backdash anymore, that also means if your opponent runs up on you and you block their next attack while your gauge is empty, you will be stunned. So let's say I'm bullying main, right? I got him in block streams, I'm pressuring him, he doesn't want any part of me. He's like, no, I don't want to do anything to do with this, I'm gonna get out of here. So he starts backdashing. Well, if I run after him and he blocks my next attack, he's stunned. So that means in this game, you have to be very, and I do mean very careful about how you want to spend your risk gauge. Also, in this game, you can perform what we call a guard cancel. So let's say your opponent's pressuring you and you want to get out. Well, for 1 bar meter, you can guard cancel and get out of pressure. Now, this mechanic is a little iffy. From what I tested, it's not the greatest, but it's there. It's another thing you spend your risk gauge on. So all in all, it's very important to understand when and where to use your risk gauge meter, whether to be backdashing, guard canceling, etc., etc. So with all that being explained, it's time to finally explain to you guys why mashing during your opponent's block string is a very bad idea in this game. So as I previously stated, if you block attacks in this game, your risk gauge takes damage and it depletes. Now, but you probably look at the risk gauge there, like, you know what, this ain't a lot of damage. Like, I'm not even taking damage for real. Like, this ain't nothing. But you know what, I'm getting really tired of this guy like pressuring me. I'm gonna just start mashing because I know I'm gonna hit him out of something eventually. And I'm pretty sure nothing wrong is gonna happen to me, right? Well, that's where you're actually wrong. So in this game, we have a mechanic known as Fatal Guard. And the way Fatal Guard works is that if you buffer an input during your opponent's block stream, on their next hit, you will take 1 full bar of risk gauge damage. So it looks something like this. So boom, boom. You see how on the first and third hit, he took 2 bars of risk gauge damage? That's because for Fatal Guard, there's a 30 frame cooldown before Fatal Guard can occur again. So on every other hit, even though the opponent is still mashing, they're not losing a bar risk gauge on every hit. It's like every other hit. So as you can see, you lose risk gauge really fast if you're just mashing on your opponent's stuff. And once you lose all your risk gauge, you can take a very beefy combo. You know what I'm saying? So it's very ill-advised to mash too much in this game because you will pay a big price for it. Now, does that mean people won't mash as much? No. People will still mash because we are fighting game players. That is our God-given right. We have the right to mash when we want to. It's just that in this game, the rules are a little bit different. And if you mash too much, you're going to be losing a lot. So why is this mechanic works the way it does? Well, I'm not in the head of Free, but I'm pretty sure when he designed this game, he wanted to make players think more about when and where to mash out an opponent's pressure. He probably wanted players to sort of recognize an opponent's block streams, sort of figure out, okay, I know there's a gap here. I could probably press a button here, or I could probably jump out in this instance, as opposed to like just guess smashing. I honestly think it's a very cool mechanic, and it kind of causes you to think more on defense. Plus, add on to the fact that you have to make sure you're not bad dashing too much, because like I said before, your risk gauge is tied to your defensive option. So there's a lot of layers to just this one gauge right here, and it's very interesting. Now, I do want to mention one other thing. That let's say, you know what, I learned my lesson. I'm not gonna mash anymore. I'm gonna take the pressure. And once I know there's a hole in his offense, I'm gonna take my turn, because I'm a Giga Chad. I can do that. Like I learned my lesson. I know what to do now. Here's the thing. So, as I mentioned in another video, we have another mechanic called Fatal Shift, where your next attack is like a very beat up, very juicy attack, right? Now, if you block a Fatal Shift attack, you take 1 bar risk gauge. Also, even if you're not blocking, let's say you get hit by a Fatal Shift attack, you still lose a bar risk gauge. There are ways an opponent can force you to lose a lot of risk gauge. Now, I want to point out that if you block a Fatal Shift attack and you lose a bar risk gauge, your risk gauge actually turns orange. And during this brief period of time, you cannot take additional risk gauge damage from additional Fatal Shift attacks. So if I'm just mashing just Fatal Shift attacks, and I'm just keep doing it, you're taking normal risk gauge damage. You're not losing bars and bars of risk gauge damage from additional Fatal Shift attacks. As long as that gauge is orange, you will not lose additional bars of risk gauge attacks from additional Fatal Shift attacks. However, if you are mashing during that time period, you will still lose a lot of risk gauge. So please try not to mash too much. Now, I also wanted to point out something I probably should point out earlier when it comes to like blocking and fatal guarding. When you block normally in this game, your guard is like a green color, right? Now, when you're triggering a fatal guard, your guard actually turns red. This is a visual indicator that someone is mashing during your block strings. Also, there's like an audio cue too. It sounds really weird, but those are some of your cues to know when somebody is triggering a fatal guard. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Hopefully, you have learned that mashing, even though it's our God-given right as fighting game players, it's not quite the best idea to do too much in this game in particular. Let me know in the comment section below if this video helped you out in any shape or form. Also, let me know if I missed anything, whether it be a major detail or a very minute detail. Let me know in the comment section below. Or if you are in the Discord, let me know there as well. I want to make sure I get you guys the most accurate information about this game as possible. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy Disco Wonderland. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.